Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Pinsetter1991 and we're working on a new tutorial video today. I'm going to be showing you how to draw a beach landscape, and it's got a shipwreck in it. And this was inspired by one of your comments, one of your suggestions by Cliff C. He said draw an epic pirate ship, and even though this is a shipwreck, it's not so epic. Your comment gave me the inspiration to do a new beach scene and add a ship in there somewhere. So I really like how it turned out, and I'm going to be going over all the techniques and all the materials that I used to draw this. So we'll start off talking about the paper that I use. It's a piece of Arches watercolor paper. It's really good quality paper. It's made out of 100% cotton, and it's the hot pressed 140 pound. So I took a piece of that. It's 14 by 10 inches, and I cut it in half. So now it's 14 by 5 inches, and that gives it more of a panoramic kind of aspect ratio, I guess. The beach is flat, the water's flat, it's nice and long, so I really like the way it turned out, having a longer, flatter piece of paper. And I start off by drawing an outline of the shipwreck, but don't bother doing this yet. I just did it to give myself an idea of where the ship was going to be, but in a few minutes I end up just covering it up with the sky and the ocean and all that, so don't even bother doing this yet. So the first thing I like to do when I'm drawing the sky is I use a ruler to make a line going all the way across the paper, and that's going to show how far down the sky goes, because eventually you need to stop around where the ocean is going to start. So I make a line that's about 2.5 inches up from the bottom of the paper. Next, I grab a piece of compressed charcoal. The brand I like to use for this part is Art Alternatives, because they've got a really soft charcoal and it goes on the paper really easy. So once you've got a decent amount of charcoal on a separate sheet of paper, you're going to want to start smearing it around with a piece of toilet paper or tissue paper or paper towel. Next, you're going to start blending it onto your paper, and the reason I do it this way is because it gives you a lot of control over how dark the sky gets, because you can just do a little bit at a time, and it also goes on really smooth, and it's also surprisingly easy to erase, which is good because in a few minutes we're going to be erasing to make our clouds. So for the clouds, I grab a kneaded eraser and I just start erasing away little shapes, and it doesn't really matter exactly what shapes they are, just little spots, circles. Clouds can be shaped like anything, so it doesn't really matter. But one thing I really like to do is to go online and do an internet search for clouds and beach skies and all that stuff, and I print off a few reference images. That way I can have a few ideas while I'm drawing. Alright, so now that we've got some clouds done, I'm going to go back in with the charcoal covered toilet paper and start adding in some darker values, some of the shadows that the clouds have. And I basically just go back and forth between using the eraser and using the charcoal until I have all the highlights and all the shadows and all the midtones that look good to me. So the next thing I use for adding really small highlights is the Faber Castell eraser pencil. And this thing's awesome. I use it in all of my videos, so you guys have probably heard me talk about it 1,000 times, but it's a pencil that has rubber inside of it, so you can actually sharpen it and use it to make really thin lines, and small little highlights let you get in there and do lots of little details. So you can find them online. They're like $5 or $6, and it's definitely worth it. Now if you want to add in really fine shadows, something I like to use is a blending stump, and then I'll actually take a piece of compressed charcoal and smear it directly onto the tip of the blending stump, and then basically draw the shadows in there. Alright, so now that we've got our sky looking nice, we're going to take a piece of paper, and I just use the other half of the paper that I'm drawing on, because like I mentioned, I cut it in half up the middle. And you're going to lay that over your sky so that you don't mess it up in the next part, because we're going to start on the ocean now. And we're basically going to use the exact same technique that I used to make the sky. We're going to smear the charcoal on, but we're just going to go a lot darker because the water compared to the sky is darker. The other thing I do really quick is I grab a mechanical pencil and just do a really quick general outline of where the shore is going to be, because I don't want to have the ocean going all the way down to the bottom of the page. I still need to leave room for the sand and everything else that we're going to add in, so I just make a really faint line to give myself a marker to go by. So as you can see, I'm making it a lot darker than the sky, but like I said earlier, it's the same process. I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm just adding a lot more charcoal and making it a lot darker to get some good contrast. Another thing I do to make it a little bit more convenient is put charcoal directly onto that scrap paper, and then you can just smear it straight down onto your drawing. So now you can remove the paper and make sure everything looks good. And when I removed my paper, I noticed that my ocean was just a tiny bit slanted. So I did a quick measurement because it was annoying me, and I put the paper back on really quick and fixed it. Alright, so now that the ocean is perfectly flat, we're going to go back to using the kneaded eraser. You can see I shaped it. I just kind of smashed one end of it to make it flat. But basically, all we're doing is adding in some highlights on the ocean to make it look like there's some waves out there. So at this point, you guys don't need to worry about adding in a lot of detail on the waves. All these waves that I'm putting in that are close to the sand right now, I actually end up erasing because I decide that I want it to look a lot more calm. So in the end, I add a few waves that are further out in the distance, and then all the water near the sand is just going to be calm. The next thing I do to lighten up the ocean a little bit and blend it all together a little bit better is I use the Habico brush. It's called the Duo Pastello, and it works really well for blending charcoal and pastels and all that stuff. But you could go over this with the tissue paper that we were using earlier, or a paintbrush or a makeup brush should work also. So now we're going to start adding in some rocks. These are really big, almost like little islands that are going to be out there off the shore. And as I start to add this one in, I realize that I'm making it a little bit too close to the shore. So I end up having to erase this one and move them further back a little bit, which isn't a huge deal. I just start by outlining these with the HB General's charcoal pencil, and then once I have them all outlined, I just fill them in. So now, like I mentioned before, I'm gonna get rid of this one that I started on that was too close, So I just erase away with the eraser pencil, and then we'll just blend it together and make it look smooth again. We're also going to be adding in waves right there, so it'll be easy to cover up. Alright, so next we're going to use that eraser pencil to add some highlights, and this will make it look like there's waves hitting the rocks out there. So now we're going to add those waves to the background, and to do this it helps to have a ruler to make them really flat because they're pretty far away, and it's going to make them look like they're curling out there. So you just go along the ruler with your eraser pencil to make a nice flat highlight. Next you can use the blending stump to darken the inside of the wave. And then you can use the eraser pencil to highlight a section of the wave to make it look like it's crashing down. So now we're going to work on the shore a little bit, right where the ocean meets the sand, and we're using a General's charcoal pencil, and by using the combination of the charcoal pencil and a white charcoal pencil, we can get a really cool reflective effect out of the sand to make it look like it's actually wet. For this part I also used some compressed charcoal to make it darker, and I blend it in with a brush. Next I switch to the General's white charcoal pencil and start adding in some highlights. I start with the background and slowly make my way forward. So now to really make this sand look wet, I add a lot of white charcoal to get a good contrast between the reflection of those rocks and the wet sand. You can also buy compressed white charcoal sticks to do this part, and that makes it a little bit easier because you can just add tons and tons of it until you get the effect you want. So now to add the sand, we use that exact same technique that we used to do the sky and the ocean. Alright guys, so I didn't want to make this video super long, so I'm going to cut it into 2 parts. So that's the end of part 1, and be sure to check below for part 2. We're going to go over how to draw the shipwreck, the palm trees, the rocks, and all that stuff. So please hit like if you enjoyed this video, and make sure you check the info bar underneath the video, because that's where you'll find all the reference images to help you draw this yourself.